I'm joined here by my creator, who is not saying anything.
Wait, can you hear me? Can people
Oh,
hear me now?
yes, now you're saying something. Hello, my creator.
Hello.
And we're...
Welcome to 1.8 modding.
Yeah,
this is what everything looks like.
Yes. It's an
In
accurate
the beginning,
representation.
anyway.
Yes, also, around with us we have Snuggar, aka Sungar, developer of Open Computers.
And Tis3D.
Yes, and also the mourned over Open Components. I still miss that mod. It was so good.
Oh, right! That was a thing.
Yes!
Alright,
so...
We had Amadornus, but he had to go, I think.
Right, Amadornus is going to come back soon because he's under BSOD, so I think we should start by talking about...
What's different?
This thing. This thing. This thing right here, which is close to... Yes, the missing texture, which is closely related to another thing which happened. Jason's.
Now you might be wondering, who is Jason? Why does he care about me? Who is he? Why is he
He's a
stalking
stalker.
me? Why is he in my house? Why is he on my computer? How do I get
Why
rid
does
of
he
him?
have a chainsaw?
Okay, so to make this more technical, in Minecraft 1.8, Mojang introduced a new format for models. Instead of hard coding them all, which is terrible, they used JavaScript object notation, or JSON, which could be a very good system, but there's a catch, of course. There's always a catch. So the way Mojang did it is that, let me show you on the screen. I'm going to have to turn this off.
No.
Reboot. I'm going to fire up an editor. Can you see everything clearly?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so in an ideal world, you would write a model like, I don't know, like this.
While you're typing, I'd like to point out that the general approach is actually a really good idea to separate the data of the rendering from the rest of the game logic a bit. But yeah.
The JSON itself, having a JSON model itself is not a bad thing, but it's the way they executed it that has something to be designed.
Okay, so in an ideal world, you would write a model like this, and you would specify the parameters which are different for each variant of the block. However, what Mojang provided us with
you have to make a different model for every possible combination of anything. Which is why there are a few solutions and workarounds, which is at least one thing that I did for 1.8 is there are some internal codeways that allow you to get around this. So basically using some internal codeways, it took me a few months, but I managed to do connected texture. So you can do most of the stuff you did in 1.7, but it's harder.
Okay, so to explain what I did, in 1.8 vanilla, I didn't sort of say replace one rotation with model 1 second. So in 1.8, what happened is that the block state file, which defines all the states a block can be in, it could only have a list of models, and then every single model had to be a separate JSON file. So it turned out Redstone has 16, Fire has like 100. Well, it's not very good to work with for a modder. So, my personal story was that I downloaded Minecraft 1.8 on the day of release. I wanted to port Buildcraft because Spacetoad asked me to. And then I saw the horror. The horror. And I complained about it on Reddit because Skyboy mentioned it, and someone asked what the problem of JSONs is after Skyboy tweeted it. And, well, some people still complain that after this, my Legion of Minions essentially went and started saying that 1.8 killed modding, which is not true. What killed modding is the fact that 1.8 is, as I said, an unfinished refactor. Much like Minecraft 1.3, they started working on a model system but didn't finish it. Now, a model system is fantastic. Separating code from data is amazing because, first of all, it means that your code can improve things as necessary. For instance, Forge implements lightning calculations now, so you don't need to hard code your lightning now, which is amazing. It will make a lot of things look a lot better, possibly make things like colored lights possible without massive core mods, which change all the rendering. However...
Welcome back, Amadorna.
Hello, Amadornis.
Actually, I don't think is he on mobile?
Not yet. There we go. So...
Hello!
The problem with this setup is that it took up a lot of files. And a lot of people got very annoyed over it, so we've had workarounds. One of these workarounds involved hooking into the block renderer dispatcher, which for the unknown client is the class in 1.8, which calls the renderers, and essentially supplying our own renderer. The problem with that is that really only a few mods can do it at a time before it becomes a massive burden on the engine and stuff, because this is something that's called a lot, and this should not be wrapped indefinitely. So modders got annoyed about this, and some of the braver ones went complaining to Lex, and it eventually ended in Fry Warrior contributing to Lex, first with an iSmart block model, which was a sanctioned workaround, and later with a proper model system, similar to the first one I showed, and later with OBG support. Actually, OBG support is really interesting because...
I think that was Shade Killer, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
but what Rain Warrior did is provide all of the Forge backend that made those things possible. So, what OBJ loading in static mode gives us, you need to have a key distinction. Static mode, it's rendered once, it stays on the GPU, but every time you change something in static mode, you re-render an entire 16 by 16 by 16 chunk, so it takes a while to refresh. And dynamic, you're sending data to the GPU on every frame, so it's very good for things which would change anyway, because only that block has to update. Currently, most mods which use OBJ file models use dynamic mode, which is very silly because they cause a lot of strain on the GPU, but on 1.8 it's very easy to make them rendered statically. One example of a mod which will now use static rendering is Bibliocraft. So this table and these chairs will get a lot more efficient to render, which is great.
Okay, and can I talk a little bit more about the iSmart block model?
Yes.
So iSmart block model allows for a lot of flexibility. When I first came into the community, I was working on a Chisel port for 1.8, and basically, I looked into different ways to do that with JSON for a long time. I looked into it for like a month, tried many different things with culling faces, and eventually, I realized that I had to use iSmart block model. And so it took me another 2 months to learn that. Trust me, the 1.8 model system is somewhat complex. And I eventually managed to do it by, basically, if you see, the Chisel uses an interesting connected texture system where it has only two textures for each block, but I did each block actually in Chisel 1.8 has 4 quads each side. So basically I did a bunch of fancy rendering stuff with iSmart block model, and I managed to do connected textures.
Right, and there's also iSmart item model.
Oh, yes.
It's the same thing, but for items. Thankfully, I believe with recent Forge changes, Forge also does the perspective calculations for you. So instead of doing weird world renderer / tessellator wizardry, you now do, you give it a rotation and you pass it to Forge, and Forge will automatically rotate your stuff for you. That's great. In other words, after the initial problems with Vanilla 1.8 Forge made making good-looking stuff a lot easier for modders than 1.7 ever was. Which will lead to prettier mods overall. I mean, the only reason charted wires and gates even exist is that because models exist. And it's faster because static multithreading is multi-threaded. Yes! Actually, that's not entirely true. In Minecraft 1.7, Optifine actually tries to multi-thread static rendering, but it does it wrong. So if you look at the Tikan Smeltery or the Buildcraft pipe, you crash because it's not threaded correctly. In 1.8, it's properly multi-threaded rendering. So yeah, so your chunk loading should get faster now, this without Optifine. Anything else we should say on rendering changes?
The big changes have scared some people away, and honestly, some mods have been not willing to update. And that's one of the things that caused 1.8 to be such a stigma. When did 1.8 come out? It came out, like, I believe, over a year ago, and still very few mods have updated to it. And honestly, I just think that's somewhat interesting and maybe even a little astonishing that people haven't updated given over a year.
Well, that's
Yeah.
somewhat my fault. I was one of the most vocal 1.8 opposers, but that's mainly because I spent a month of my time wasted trying to port BuildCraft. So I became vocal opponent until July, when I saw the lightning changes, which was to me the tipping point at which 1.8 modeling became way easier, because now you didn't have to calculate your lightning. Anything else on rendering? Because I'd
Wasn't
like
there
to
an
go
issue
next.
with occlusion?
Oh, occlusion? Occlusion.
Yeah, when
Oh, you mean the algorithm they use to display non-rendering chunks?
Yes.
Yes! 1.8 has that issue. COFH tweaks had that issue in the beginning. The only mod which I'm sure really fixed it is Fastcraft, so I'm sure that player will just bring his fix to 1.8 if a need arises, or someone else will fix it. The issue is slide. Essentially, sometimes chunks far away won't render in some very specific scenarios. It's just a bug, but then what is playing Minecraft on mods without bugs?
Yeah.
I mean, BTM stands for Bug Testing Marathon 2016, I'm sure we all know. Break the mods. Anyway, anything else on rendering? Maybe you want to ask some questions, because I think we're going to split it on subjects.
Yeah, so any rendering questions?
Yeah, rendering questions now.
Well, you could, for item rendering, pretty much you can either, there's pretty much three ways. You could do iSmart item model, you could have it be a tile entity, and tile entity renders work in the inventory, or I'm not condoning this, you should not do this, but I guess you could do ASM.
Okay, I talked to Rain Warrior about this, and essentially the answer he gave me is that item models are supposed to be static. And this is because, first of all, static models can be optimized, dynamic models not so much. And second, this means that blocks can now render things like item icons and stuff statically instead of dynamically.
Actually,
and of course, if you use the TSR hack, this will not work.
Actually, I want to say, it's not really that static, because if you actually do a console log print every time a handle item state is called in an iSmart item model, it actually is called about every tick.
For the GUI, yes, but if you're designing a block, you have that option now, like if you were making your own display case, let's say.
Yeah.
That's an option. And of course, Optifine can come around and start caching the GUI in VBOs or something. It's doable. So, yeah, so item models, okay, they are a bit of a downgrade over what we used to have. So we need to code a bit more, but I think the benefits are worth it. The compass and clock effects can all be done on iSmart item models. In fact, the tomometer can be done on iSmart item models. Rain Warrior made a tech demo.
You could do anything you could do in 1.7 and 1.8. It might be a little harder, but you can.
Okay, almost everything, except like super fancy blending effects. But let's be honest, very few mods use those, and I think the benefits are worth it.
Yeah. Okay, I see a question up there. What about shaders for player entities? Will this be effective for a long-term view? What do you mean shader for player entities?
Shaders. Shaders are always applied outside of Minecraft's ticks. So Minecraft's like normal rendering group. 1.8 will make this a bit more confined because Forge now has a rendering pipeline which you can properly hook into and do things like replace lightning, possibly replace the shading. You have a proper pipeline and you can probably use this to make shaders work a lot better. From what I know, Optifine is doing something to make shaders, and shaders should also be a lot more compatible now. I think, because hooking into arrays of vertices is much easier than hooking into a single-threaded, single-tone tessellator. Dynamic colors too. Dynamic colors work fine, But you need to be watch out. Okay, so let me explain quickly how 1.8 model creation works on the screen.
Yeah, vanilla 1.8 actually has shaders already, so it's actually it has shaders.
Pam's asking, is there a way to bypass Harvest Craft's need for over 1600 text files?
Yes.
Yes, you could make your own model loader, which would essentially create a model based on, well, anything.
You don't even need to have your own loader. You can use the implementation of a model that you have
Yes.
for everything, and then just
Yes,
register that in the model baked event.
In Charted Gates, I do a very interesting approach. I'm going to explain the model system first, then I'm going to explain what I did in Charted. So, in 1.8 iSmart item models, well, 1.7, you had this.
I don't hear anything.
Nobody's talking for a brief moment. Okay, so in 1.7 you essentially had to get a tessellator, and you essentially called functions on the tessellator. Now, this is an issue because you're essentially calling functions, which is slightly expensive, slightly hard to work with, and I'm sure most modders who wrote an ISBRH can testify to that. This is annoying. However, it did let you do such things as I don't remember the exact names now. So yeah, in 1.8, it's changed. Everything now revolves around these. List of baked quads. Now, what are baked quads?
Baked quad is basically just four vertexes with UV.
Yes, yes, 4 vertices with UV. Okay, so now you have a function, an iSmart block model. Vic OBJ is implemented in Minecraft 1.8. I'm not sure what we're waiting for, but I actually think that for simple block models, voxel models, JSON is a lot better to work with just because I cannot be bothered to ever learn Blender. Okay, so you have a function you have to implement called listBakedQuad get general. You can cache the ISBRHs, but you cannot cache the function calls. You still have to do the function calls. And here instead you can just pass a list of objects, and instead of the functions putting it into an array and then taking it out, you just skip the first part of the process. Also, the baked quads can later be easily edited by other things in the pipeline, which they cannot with hooking into the tessellator, because hooking into the tessellator can cause a lot of weird bugs. Okay. So you have get quads, and what you do is you make a new list of baked quads, and you emit baked quads. Baked quad can come in lots of formats. You are limited to quads. So are you in the tessellator. The tessellator only lets you do quads. If you try to do triangles, it will likely start doing weird things eventually. The tessellator can only do quads, and oh. Yes, of course, that's what you can do with baked quads as well. Just put in the same baked quad twice. Baked quads are not mutable. You can render anything that GL can do in the tessellator. No. If you are using GL commands in the tessellator, you should probably rethink your modding career, because if you're using GL commands in the tessellator is operating in a very specific GL mode. If you do things like GL color, they won't work, because the tessellator is technically a display list, yes, but if you start doing GL color things, they will break other things. Anyhow, so this is 1.8, and also, if you want colors, this is very important and something that many people might not realize. If you want color, this is your friend. Otherwise, your colors will not render. This is very important. This is probably for, I don't know, performance reasons or vanilla bug reasons. I don't know, you'd have to ask Rain Warrior. Also, now, yeah, so this is how the system works. You emit baked quads. So, yeah, ask try everything. Yes, you can pass RGB into that. Wasn't Fry here a while ago? Possibly? I don't know. Okay, so now Charset. So Charset has gates, and gates are built in an interesting manner. Let me do some art here. So this is what the gate looks like from the side. But what's actually happening is that just below the base, you have layers which render the redstone wires that create a gate. So we have multiple layers. On top of that, we have torches. And it started looking like a cake, more like a gate now.
I was going to say
The
that
cake
looks like
is-
a cake.
The cake is a gate. Anyhow, so doing also a gate can be rotated in 24 different combinations. It can also be flipped in certain cases, and it can have various settings on it sometimes. So how do you render this in 1.7? Well, in 1.7,
Oh, I was going to add the actual candles.
yeah, so this is what happens in 1.7. You hardcode all the things. You write a massive library which does the rendering for you. Imibis uses a rotated tessellator, which is a wrapper which rotates the tessellator calls. Chicken Bones has a library for it. Other modders either have a library or just don't bother. So now, what do you do in 1.8? In 1.8, I've made a few model files. These. So I have 4 models. Now you know how durable JSON is. Of course you're not going to do gates with 4 models. But then there's a friend I can ask for help. This is the model loader. It's a thing. What model loader lets you do is it lets you load an iModel. Now I have to go here an important distinction.
Between iModel and iBaked model.
Yes, could you go on about it? I'm going to write something.
An iModel basically is, well, if you don't bake things, basically, an iModel just has most of the raw data read from the JSON file, raw data read from whatever is the source of it. And then what happens is that gets baked. And basically the data gets compressed, optimized, and put into a format, usually where it can be just, where it usually just has a list of the quads that are emitted by the baked model. Oh, well, yeah?
A better explanation, I think, would be that iModel is essentially the model before... It's the cake before you bake it.
Yes.
As in, it can be changed still. You can retexture it. There's iRetexturable model. There's iPerspective our model, which lets you change the perspective of the model or transform it. And you can transform it, you can give it a block state. Essentially, it's editable. iBaked model is a model created for a specific vertex format in a specific rotation. It's essentially done at this point.
I mean, not unbaking, you might be able to unbake it, I guess, if you would have
Yes,
to write your own code to do it, but...
Yes, you can unbake it manually by unpacking the quads back into an editable format. Okay, so what model loader does is it loads iModels for the JSONs.
Well, you're talking more specifically about iCustom model loader, right?
No, I'm actually using the JSON model loader here
Oh,
to load the JSON models. And here what I do. I load the gate-based model, I rotate it with the transforms with the eye model to create an eye-baked model for a specific situation. You can easily combine transforms, so I just do one transform to rotate the gate around itself and then one to put it on a specific face. Then I render multiple layers, and here's where I retexturable model comes in. I take the layer, I change the texture to represent the specific layer, and then I do the same transforms and draw it. And then for torches, I also rotate them, but I also move them to a specific location on the gate. Which means that I created a format for gate definition. So there's file like and.json, and it contains information about what layers exist and what torches exist. So in other words, if you want to save yourself a lot of hassle and things like this, you can actually load in the JSON manually, transform it manually, and draw it in an iSmart block model without having to worry about what quads are. You can just load subparts. If you're using OBJ, this is already done for you. You can control subparts from within the block state. Okay, so now question time, I guess. Is Minecraft 1.8 like that old 64-bit console that nobody uses because everyone uses triangles? What? Everyone uses triangles? Could you have a look around the convention center, please? How come not many mods have updated to 1.8? We've already explained there's a stigma from the initial issues. And it's just the stigma is so huge that, yeah.
Well, actually, I want to add, one of the major things is actually the removal of forage direction, which I know has gotten some people against updating.
Actually, that
Yeah.
was mostly COFH. What happened
Yeah.
essentially is that forage direction got replaced by the vanilla enum facing, which has almost the same features.
Except for unknown direction.
Yes, it doesn't have an unknown direction, it uses null. So what do you get? You get null checks everywhere. And of course, most mods don't have the null checks. Which means, since you don't have the null checks, well, you're bound to start getting a lot of null pointer exceptions, as Cordianchi pulled up. You can use optional, but that's additional, well, performance issues in most cases. You shouldn't wrap things around like that. It's ugly. Also, enum faces are, I believe, singletons because they're an enum, so making it optional will just make your mod use a lot more RAM. Any more rendering-related questions? Because I want to get to networking.
Well, can I talk a little bit about more rendering, actually?
Yeah, of course.
So, I don't know. Basically, Asi was saying about what that is. So, basically, I just want to talk about connected textures a bit, because that is basically...
Your expertise.
Yes, that's what I do. And connected textures, what I did basically, I don't know if I'm not that good at writing things on the screen, so I'll just try to explain it. Each face of the block, which is usually one quad, has 4 different quads that is a section of a main texture, and those get lined up and make connected textures using logic. Okay.
Right. So that's rendering. Let's get into networking now, because networking has changed in a good and terrible way. I'm going to go to the screen again. I'm going to do that a lot, aren't I? So I'm going to save this one because it's really nice. Okay, that's a free letter. So, networking.
Yes, that's right. Multi-threading fun. Both in rendering and in networking.
It's a miracle.
It's magic.
Oh, it's magic.
It's especially evil if you don't know about it.
So, to sum this up, networking is now threaded. This means less performance issues because in 1.7 and below, I believe, when a packet arrived, it was added to a quirk. How do you pronounce quirk?
A queue?
Yes,
Queue.
a queue, yes. So it had to wait until the tick ended, which is an additional 1 to 49 milliseconds, depending on how lucky you are. So this means less performance issues, because now packets are processed instantly. Less latency, because you're not waiting for ticks to end. Some minimal amounts of per data moved from the main thread, so this can be run in another core. But there's a minus. This is not netty. They actually added this in 1.8. They now have proper netty threading.
They are using netty. Yes.
Properly, yes, but there's a problem. Do you know how much programmers love multi-threading? Well,
They
Very
don't.
much.
Depends
A
on the program.
lot.
Depends on who it is.
multi-threading is awesome until you run into issues with it. So,
You
race
don't.
conditions.
Never.
Yay!
No issues.
Now, you have this issue that while your packet is being received, the server or the client might be using or modifying your tile entity or whatnot. Which means, essentially, that you're going to end up with a very rare crash. So, is there a solution about it? Yes.
Race condition.
Minecraft got Minecraft is calling from.
Okay, so these look interesting.
Yes. Very.
I think those are the names anyway. The first one essentially returns true if you're currently in the main thread. So if you're because apparently there is a chance that the networking code might be called from the Minecraft thread. I don't know why. They check for it for reasons. And now the second one is add scheduled task. So add scheduled task adds a task which gets run after Minecraft has stopped ticking. I think the check is actually not in there because that would mean you'd have to spawn a new runnable object every time. And that way it's essentially that tiny bit faster. So, if you're modifying a tile entity, yes, Chilex. However, this is if you need to synchronize. And for instance, in charset, in charset stuff is made to not have to synchronize, so it's faster. But for instance, if you're porting a mod and want to ensure it doesn't crash in the beginning, you can just wrap all of your networking code in this and then it will run the old way. However, you should really rewrite parts of your mod to, well, be threaded in this manner, because this will mean much less latency and thus better gameplay experience for your players. Yeah, so that's the networking pitfall. This is very important. I've run into this myself. Remember it. Thank you. I think that CPUs generally handle those on their own. That would be silly if it worked that way.
There are memory barriers.
That's possible, but yeah, this is important. So, right, so that's the networking. Any networking questions for 1.8? If you use the world, it really depends. If you're reading from it, you're usually fine. But because 1.8 had work done on multi-threading, so if you're just reading from it, you should be fine. Oh, alright, well, just wrap your packet in this and you're going to sleep better at night. Unless you want to add special Endermen which randomly crash the game.
Also, probably avoid triggering chunk loads
This is
Yeah.
about me, right?
if you're accessing the world.
Yeah, also that is pretty important because, well, actually, no, because something that many people don't know is that since, I don't know, 1.6, 1.7, Forge actually adds as a threaded chunk loading to an extent. It's unbelievable, but they actually do. Can you give an example of what happens when you don't respect threading? Something weird usually happens. Generally, you will get a crash or some kind of race condition crash. Like,
It's
do
called
you know the
concurrent verification exception.
Yes, remember the famous entity tracker crash in 1.7, which happened randomly from time to time, when essentially entity tracker had a CME and nobody knew it was there? Well, that was essentially an example of what happens. So networking is a good change, but you need to be very careful.
I think Health Player wanted a real world example. No, we are not going to crash everybody.
Yeah, we're not going to. I can't really remember what happened when I first ran into that. I think it was during the Buildcraft port. Some block was crashing me, but I don't remember anymore because that was over a year ago. Well, no. Yes, oh, alright, it's 2016, yes. Over a year. Wait, it's 2016? Wow. Okay, so rendering, networking. Oh, right. Now we get to talk about our biggest friend in 1.8.
Lex Manus.
Right?
BlockPos.
Yes, BlockPos.
Yay.
So what Mojang essentially did is
No, but they probably get the point. I'm sure we'll explain it.
okay, so what they essentially did is that essentially everywhere or in most places, they replaced XYZ coordinates with BlockPos pose. So this is interesting, because this looks like an object. These don't. This looks like it's going to lag a lot. However, in real-world experience, it really doesn't. Mainly because I actually argued with Lex over this, and I learned about something called a young generation. So, yeah.
Welcome to Garbage Collection.
Yes. Yes, garbage collection is great. We actually have 10 threads just doing garbage collection on this server. Can you imagine 10 garbage collectors, like in real world, sitting over one giant trash bin and collecting the trash? Well, that's what this
basically
server is
1.8.
looking like. Yeah, no, that's basically what our server is looking like.
The lesson we know from this is that garbage collection is very important job.
Was there an explosion?
Probably.
yeah.
That's normal. That's
explosion.
normal. This is BTM.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so that's BlockPos. Now, what does BlockPos give us? It lets us easily do things like this.
Also, it's a vector, so you can multiply it.
Yes, you can also do
Yeah.
offsets, you can do additions, you can do subtractions. They also have a mutable BlockPos, which is apparently the same thing, only you can actually edit the variables, but it's a bit finicky to use, and I just haven't figured it out yet. So yeah, so this is a very nice thing. Also, I'm pretty sure that this means that the stack gets a bit smaller, because 3 ints take up 12 bytes, and the pose pointer should only take 8. That's interesting. Okay, so that's BlockPos. That's also one thing. That's the most painful in terms of workload part, because the networking differences are small, the item ones are small. Rendering is annoying because you need to rewrite all the things, but it's fun because you're coding. But BlockPos is not even fun. You're just sitting in front of your computer screen and doing find, replace, find, replace, find, replace, find, replace, find, replace on a few hundred
And then
classes.
you have to fix all the issues.
Yes. So that's something to keep in mind, but if you do it right, your code becomes a lot cleaner. Why would anyone use BlockPos? Your code becomes a lot cleaner and it doesn't give a big performance hit.
What's the difference between BlockPos and a usual vector 3? A vector 3 uses doubles or floats, which have decimal points, and BlockPos uses integers.
Well, it's vector 3D or vector 3i.
Yeah,
BlockPos actually extends vec3i.
it does. Yes, that's where it gets all the vector operations.
Yeah.
Another reason to use it is actually you have less code, so there's less chance to do any mistakes by copy-pasting X and Y into the wrong location, which definitely happened to me a couple of times. So
It happened to me when I was doing BlockPos, because I essentially created something like this when porting chars at pod. Yeah.
XXX.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think all of
copy-pasting.
us have done that.
Yeah. So, it's not perfect, but it prevents stupid issues from rising. Or when I was adding offsets from forward direction, I added offset X 3 times once.
Exactly, that's what I meant, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so
Math.
Let's bring that back for a while.
Yay!
It relaxes me.
Meanwhile,
Yeah.
Sapphire Drama comes to BTM.
The 1.8 is cool. Use it.
1.8 is well, actually 1.8 is not that cool. You should use 1.8.9. But you will.
1.9 have that 1.8 doesn't.
Mostly it's the fact that in 1.8.8 there's a lot of fork changes. Oh, I should talk about the fork changes. Yes, Amadorness, come up. It's your time because some of it is going to be about you. So in 1.8 we had a lot of the rendering changes by Rain Warrior, but in 1.8.8, me, Amadorness, Algorith X2, CPW, Lex Manos, and probably a couple other testers are working on some amazing things. First of all, CPW is working on something called tile entity proxying. Could you explain that, Amadorness?
Right now, it's called, I think, capabilities.
Yeah, it's essentially, from what I heard from CPW, it's a simplified ECS, Entity Component System.
Yes.
Yeah, but could you explain, because most people except
Sure.
Shadowfax and maybe Copygirl know what that means.
Okay, so in most games, you have entities. Entities are defined just as objects. They probably have a position. They have some... But you want those entities to have special traits. In the case of Minecraft, for example, you may want your tile entity to support RF. I don't know. But you only want to support RF if it is actually installed. Right now, the only way to do this would be to use add optional, which would basically strip out all the implementations of all the RF interfaces from your blocks. And instead, what you can do with this is you can provide the implementation for the RF API externally along with your tile entity, and that will basically allow a block position to return an implementation of that API. I'm not sure if that's clear enough. It's basically providing APIs externally. You don't have to implement them in your tile entities anymore.
So you do something
Okay,
like
so-
you do something
so-
like world.get API at and then the API name and then the position.
Basically.
Yes,
That's
also...
right away.
So basically what every large game engine in recent days has done.
Yeah.
Okay, so it lets us do some very interesting things. Yes, you have an RF provider. Of course, you can probably just return yourself, but that's not nice, that's annoying. This essentially means we can finally get rid of the 20 million optionals above each tile entity class. Well, yeah, so, an important thing you have to point out. This lets us do a lot of interesting things. RWTMA is working on an item handler, which is a true transactional inventory handling system. If you've ever touched Buildcraft's internal APIs, or if you know how barrels work, you can imagine it as this, essentially. You add things to an inventory, you remove things from it, you can iterate over it. It's very nice. But the big thing which is coming, thanks to that, is, well, something you've been waiting for a long time. Do you remember Forge Multipart? Yes, so Forge Multipart was a genius idea. Essentially, you can have as many things as you want in one block as you've ever wished. It works pretty well, and it's generally great. However...
Up to 128 parts, which is probably something you are not going to exceed at any time.
Yet.
So,
so the problem of the implementation was, first of all, it was written in Scala, and not that many modders use Scala.
Scala's great!
Yeah.
Scala's great until you use it for APIs, then it's horrible.
Okay.
Especially if you have to
Yeah.
work with them with Java, within Java.
Interoperability with Scala is
Okay,
okay at times, but it can cause many issues.
Okay,
Many.
another issue is, since we don't have tile entity proxying in 1.6 or 1.7, that means that Forge Multipart proxies calls by dynamically generating multi-part classes with a custom class loader and complete wizardry, which is bound to break no matter how hard you try to prove it.
We can define this in 3 letters. ASM. That's about all you have to know.
Yeah, so lots of ASM, lots of hackery, lots of wizardry, and a slightly over-designed API that just wasn't simplistic enough, and ultimately led to what I call essentially a bloated mod. So, when I learned that, well, we've had FMP, then we've had Amebis microblocks, which was far simpler with what we're using right now. It's mostly stable, as Amadornis showed us, it's mostly stable.
Mostly.
But we want something better. We want the power of multi-parts with the simplicity, well, not of course, it's not of Amebis microblocks, but we'll get to that later, but with a very much simpler API, and thus, one day CPW came to me on IRC, and essentially we were talking, and CPW told me that he's in shop for a multi-part API. And I went to CPW and I said, hey, I know just the person for the job. And then I contacted Amadornis, and what was born out of it is, could you talk about it? I have to go for a second.
Okay. So what was born from that conversation, before I get a memory leak, because I am at 12 gigs out of 4, so what was born from that is MC Multipart, a multipart API for Minecraft 1.8, 0.9 in this case. And, well, it implements all the stuff that FMP added, along with the simplistic, really easy to use, really easy to understand, microblock, block coverable system, let's say, that allows you to just implement an interface in one of your blocks or tile entities, and magically that tile entity will be able to host covers, and you will be able to place any microblocks inside that block. Chisels and bits in other blocks, yes, that's going to be a thing. So that's one of the new things. We also have, well, just like in Forge Multipart, we have a tile entity which just holds multiparts. And you, to implement it, just need to extend one class, and that's about all you need. Extend a microblock class, register it, and add an item to place it. That's everything you need. When you place it, if it's a microblock, it will be added into the tile entity if needed, and if not, it will create a new tile entity. And if it's just a normal normal multipart, it will just create a tile entity or add it to an existing one. So we're trying to go simple. We're trying to support pretty much everything that's in 1.8 right now. So you can use JSON models, you can use your own iSmart models. And I'm going to answer this one right now. Are you going to wait to get this into Forge, or will you release it individually? We have already talked to Lex. He is going to review it really, really soon. And it is hopefully going to go into Forge.
Excuse me for a second. I found what's flagging the TPS so much. Could everyone wearing Tinker's defense armor please take it off forever? It's taking up 58% of the CPU time.
Oh wow.
That's amazing, class. This is spectacular. This is going on my list.
Okay.
Whoa,
so,
it worked!
How? What?
AC.
No, the zoom goggles are from Tinker's Construct. Those are fine.
AC,
It's just
mind
Tinker's
doing
defense.
something for me?
Yeah?
Could you continue on? I am at
I'm not sure you left off
98%
as I was. I have
of my
really
memory.
off.
Wait,
Really
actually,
off.
can you turn the screen back on so it looks all purple?
I talked about pretty much everything in MC Multipart right now.
Okay, so should I go over about Charset then or something?
Yeah, if we need to talk about MC Multipart, I will talk about it when I come back. I just need to restart the game.
Okay, so how would MC Multipart ever form versus Forge Multipart? We don't know yet. Definitely better, because the API is much simpler. We don't have to do ASM wizardry. It will also be more compatible. What we're trying to ensure, however, is that it runs much faster, of course, but you never know unless it's in production.
But I assume you do this based on models. Isn't that going to take some processing power at some point?
Actually, models generally take as much or less power than ISBRHs, depending on if you do them right.
No, I mean, the Amadune said that any model, anything should work. I assume you do this based on the collision of a model.
No, there's two separate things. The model is just rendered. The collisions are calculated separately. So what we do is we just overlay everything you throw at it.
Okay.
There's a separate thing called occlusion testing, and this tests whether parts can fit in the same spaces. There's also part slots, which I believe influence the interfaces, where the interfaces are provided. How much dedicated RAM will I need for MC Multipart? Well, a lot less, because you don't need to load in the Scala libraries.
So, should I talk about the new Chisel icon system, since you guys all talked about stuff?
I just answered questions. Someone got kicked out. Well, I'm going to have to continue until Amadornis comes back to us. How much purple and... What?
Never mind.
How much purple and black will you have with MCMP? Charset's pipes are purplish. So, talk about Charset, yes. So, Charset is an interesting scenario right now. Red Logic is, from what I know, not in a hurry to go to 1.8. Project Red is having issues because MC Multipart will mean an essentially complete rewrite. And Blue Power might be ported, but it's not a priority. Which leaves us with only one wire/gate mod, which is Charset. Now, Charset was born as a pipe mod, which was supposed to be an improvement over Buildcraft pipes while keeping similar design philosophies. For instance, Buildcraft's design philosophy of having 40 pipes was kept in that we now have one pipe type, and Buildcraft's philosophy of having multiple attachments to pipes was kept in such a way that you have one attachment that doesn't even go on the pipe. We also have some tweaks, and we have RP2-esque wires and gates. Yes, BBOLT is timing out the names of the mods. So Charset, I'm not going to go into it much because I talked about it on my yesterday talk, but what I want to point out, when will we finally get tired of re-implementing things that Red Power did first? Never. Because you're supposed to iterate over them and put your own spin on it. Also, bundled wires are essentially a cross-mode communication standard, and you should clone them as much as necessary if that means your mods will keep working together.
Hello again.
Well, welcome back.
I just talked about Charset.
Let's talk about the new Chisel face JSON a little bit. So basically, what something we Chisel have been working on is basically a format for creating a custom sort of icon face, which allows for layering different types of icons, and in the API allows for defining different texture types. And basically, you can use it to put together something which is a face. At the moment, you can only put it on a full block, but basically, it's being planned that you can put these connected texture faces on models, so you'll be able to have models that have connected texture faces. And I'm planning on actually doing integration with MC Multipart, so you can have connected textures on Chisel, Multiparts. Yeah.
Oh, this is something I didn't mention earlier. MC Multipart, apart from adding the actual Multipart API, it also adds all the core stuff needed for microblocks. This includes a microblock material registry, which, if MC Multipart gets merged into Forge, will be included, and you will be able to register your own micromaterials right inside Forge. But basically, you can define your own render handler for multiparts and for microblocks, and this will allow you to make crazy stuff, all the things that you could do with a simple smart block model you can do that with microblocks, and also you have location-dependent microblock rendering, which is something I know a lot of people are going to enjoy. So,
also, speaking of the simplicity of Immersive Microblocks API, MC Multipart has something called block and tile coverable,
yeah,
which is,
I
from what I
already
know,
mentioned
it's
it.
essentially a light version of the Microblock API. So you just implement, you just extend it, and I think you have to do a few functions, and then you get microblocks placeable on your block without having to bother too much.
Yeah. So, what do you mean by location dependent? Okay, I will show you. Let's see if I can find it in NEI.
I love the animation, by the way.
So these two blocks from Chisel connect to each other. They have connected textures, but how do connected textures actually work? Well, you have this face. You are getting the texture that's on this face. And what you do is you basically check all the blocks around it. So you check this block, this block, this block, and this block. And in this case, there is a block down here. So it renders a connection. What you can do with location-dependent micromaterials is you can do this same check inside a microblock, which means you can have connected textures to normal blocks. And normal blocks can also connect to microblocks.
So planning on implementing in Chisel, implementing the MC Multipart API, so it'll be able to do that.
And Charset is almost fully MC multipartable. The wires have some minor issues, but I'm working on fixing those. Also, Chisel and Bits is amazing because it has full multipart compatibility, so you can literally place tiny blocks in any block space which has multiparts in it. So you can now finally make fancy windows for your piping.
Yeah. When can we expect macro blocks? Fry is working on a rendering algorithm for that to basically, let's say, calculate lighting, but in a bit of a weird way. But those are coming. Those are coming for sure.
Right, I think, is there anything in 1.8 which we haven't mentioned yet?
Well, we haven't really mentioned it, but it's all around us.
Oh, yeah. Right. Welcome to 1.8.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This
this
is
is
what it
one.
looks like.
Get used to it. If you get a beta version of a mod and everything looks like this, you know you're playing on 1.8. Or maybe 1.5. Maybe.
Maybe.
But if you're playing on 1.5, you're probably doing something weird to begin with. You could mention Entity AI. I have never touched Entity AI, so I cannot speak on this subject. I am not qualified.
Wait,
me neither. So
I just want to say, I haven't talked
can
that much,
help.
but Chisel has a new thing. You can look at it basically using JSON to define cool textures, look at it, and other mods will be able to use it. It's going to be cool.
Also, Flap mentioned that we did things wrong, and 1.5 had missing texture on a white background. Which will probably make Vic very angry, because that block rendered text on its item, and Vic seems to be unable to integrate circuits.
So when will you go about implementing micro capitis blocks?
That's doable. That's definitely doable. They just have to add a couple of interfaces and they should be ready to go.
Everything is doable while MC Multipart is Sufamendorness. The moment it goes to Forge, you also have to go through other people.
That and everything is okay for now until I decide to rewrite the entire API, which tends to happen for most of my mods. So,
Rendering text using 1.8 models. In blocks, you can use TSRs like you did now. On items, if you're using the font renderer on items, it's very laggy, slow, and on smaller resolution it looks ugly, so please don't. Please use a smaller font which actually works. I'm surprised as to why... Oh, Simon, you can explain yourself. Why didn't you implement your own font renderer for floppy disks yet?
Pretty much because the whole thing with the item renderers needing a custom implementation of a font renderer to render the font rendering into quads, at least the time when I ported OpenCodeChisel
Yeah, at the
over.
time it was a bit harder, but still you should get like a really nice font.
Yeah, so now there's the style entity render thing, so I could have
Yes,
another look at it, but actually, yeah.
Charset's audio tapes should also get some kind of text support on its labels in 1.8.
Yeah. Another thing that's possible with 1.8 that was not possible with 1.7, and that's related to this thing we're talking about. Text can now be added to the block texture sheet, and it should be able to be rendered statically in JSON models, in iSmart block models, in everything.
Indeed.
It's much faster.
Are chunks meshed in a separate thread? I don't think the final stage, as in creating the chunks in the world renderer, happens in a separate thread, but I think the baked quad generation does happen in a separate thread. Animation like moving parts in 1.8 item models. Yes, you can use the iSmart item model, but that might not work with some things because, as I said,
what Fry is working on right now. He's working on a full animation system that works right within JSON files.
Yeah.
And that's going to be pretty cool, because that's going to work for both TSRs and item models.
And ISBMs, that's what the name is. Can we accept SciCraft in 1.8.9? Do we really have to do the ritual again?
You could sort of do animations in 1.8. Actually, you could do it if you have animated textures and have the quads in the right place and have the animated textures and the parts be invisible. You could make it look like it's
1.8.
And I think we're going to have to wait. Hang on.
If you're looking at the time, we have 20 minutes.
Yes. Will we get good font renderer in Forge? Any volunteers? Okay, so who wants to get eaten by the Forge moderation team? Actually, no. I'm sure that if you do a good comment, they will accept you. Forge has generally gotten a bit more accepting of our pull requests recently. I wonder why.
Somebody's like eaten.
What?
So are you no longer banned from Minecraft Forge on IC?
The last time, it was actually because I essentially made a snarky and direct remark about Lex Manos's opinions on people posting in his IRC channel.
So questions, will we get a good font render? Yeah, that was already answered. When can we expect 1.9 Forge? You probably don't want to ask that, neither to us or to Lex.
Actually, you can estimate.
You can estimate, but...
So we need to, first question is, when is 1.9 coming out? For that, we need to ask the Mojang Oracle. It used to be a building off stage near the Christmas tree, but it disintegrated due to all the missing textures, and not a dinner moon can be seen falling over. So we cannot ask the 1.9 Oracle. We need to estimate.
I can poke Prof.
They promised January, but you know how Minecraft works. If we assume it gets out in January, Fernflower is ready for 1.9 because it's ready for 1.8.8, so we won't have that issue. So, also knowing fiber optics or nodes, 1.9 is not as different from 1.8 as you'd expect.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. A lot of modders are waiting for 1.9, but They have
It's
to do a
silly.
lot of the same stuff they have to do to update
Yes,
1.8
because
anyway.
block rendering
Yeah.
is not changing. Block models are getting a Forge Minecraft's own improvements, but Forge's format is essentially a rename of the same things. There's item changes. Items are properly getting item states, but right now you just do the same thing with block states from
Is
items.
Forge Direction coming back?
No.
I don't think so, no.
Unknown is not coming back either.
So then are people just gonna wait till 2.0?
The main changes in 1.9 I'm mostly aware of. Item states, potions and enchantments get an a dynamic ID system like blocks have now, but the 1.8 part isn't Forge now. So like the potion part isn't Forge now. So no more potion and enchantment conflicts, yay.
Oh, and also dual wielding, which is going to be really painful for some mods.
It's essentially going to be like BlockPos. You have to find replace every item.
Also, axes are better than swords now.
Finally. I mean, axes they're more expensive.
Well, what they do is they do more damage, but they take longer to draw. Because now they added draw time to items. Like, it takes time to get them in your hand. And
okay,
I really hope that's configurable.
I think a better configurable Minecraft. What are you even talking about?
Yeah, it's mine for mods.
I'm in for mods.
You know, I'm going to take bets. How long will it take until there's a mod which removes the new PvP mechanics on 1.9? I give it 2 weeks from Forge release. But though I bet someone will use Medal and do it on Vanilla without Forge with Medal, so whatever. Okay, so other changes in 1.9, there's some interesting changes. Now blocks have to implement a proper axis-based rotation system which takes block states. This is for 1.9. This is for the structure generation in the new The End. But frames will benefit a lot from that, won't they?
Yes, and in fact, I was going to talk about it in this panel. So those that follow me on Twitter and are either Americans or Europeans who don't really sleep, probably saw I tweeted a photo yesterday at like 2:30 a.m. That I was working on a Forge API request. And funnily enough, Lex and Pahima replied to me in the Forgecraft IRC channel and said they couldn't read anything, that my camera was really bad. Anyway, my idea is to do something like that, that 1.9 is adding, but basically build it around a transformation class or idea. The idea is you can define your block and implement an API, an interface that has a transform method. Can I give a proper photo of that paper? I will once it's done. You can implement an interface that has two methods. One is the transform method, which takes in a world and a position along with a transformation. That transformation basically tells you what you have to do to transform your block. And that can be called many times. As many as you want, to do as many transformations as you want. You return the new world and position, and you are set. That will not cause any block updates. That will not notify anything. Nothing will update. Then you have finish transforming, which will basically notify everything that has changed. And this will basically allow things like frame, really cool transformations. Moving blocks around will be much easier if it gets merged. And the general idea is that you can define your own transformation, how the block coordinates are going to be transformed, how, I don't know, a vector would be transformed, and you are set. You can basically... Oh, my mic. That's my mixer. That's basically the idea. It's really simple transformations. That would get rid of rotate block in Forge. and you would basically tell it to rotate and then finish. It would be also, yeah, it's egg frying. It would also be an easy way to differentiate when a block is being rotated by a wrench or by something else. So that would be really cool if it got merged.
Okay, so another thing that's coming in 1.9, I believe, which is really interesting, is block state implementation. That's a rumor at least, but apparently it means that instead of implementing things in blocks, you can now have a per state implementation of some functionality, which is interesting for some reasons which I do not fully understand. Also, another rumor is that they added a debug flag for multi-threaded words, worlds, but they disabled it because multi-threaded worlds seem to be too unstable. So I wonder when a mod in 1.9 will come around, well, it will just enable that flag to true. It will become the next Optifine, or maybe even beat Optifine in the number of crashes, but who knows. So, are there any changes to multi-block workflow in 1.8? No, all multi-block workflows are mod-based, so, you know, unless the mod changes
that
it.
should stay the same. You just have to check for the blocks and
So-
the tile entities.
I think the final topic should be, should you wait for 1.9?
And what's the answer?
Okay, so I think we
Probably
should go,
not.
yeah, so can any of all of you give you a short explanation, like Amadonis, my creator, Sangar, your opinions?
Sangar, you go first.
Okay, yeah, well, so I don't think it makes sense to wait for 1.9 because way too many things are too similar, and you can pretty much do most of the work you will need to do to port your stuff to 1.9 already, and then you just have a very minor remaining step when you go to 1.9. So I really don't think there's much of a point to wait if it's just for waiting and not because you don't have the time right now or anything like that.
What about me, people who are rewriting code in 1.7 to make future updates easier? Sangar. Well, let's just all answer these global questions, because I think every modder has a different perspective.
Yeah.
Right, so you mean you have like a couple of features and you rewrite them anyway?
Yes, he has a couple of features in 1.7. He rewrites them to make 1.8 updates better, but he's also rewriting them to make the code cleaner for those of people who are still in 1.7. So he's like doing preparation work. And this is interesting because
yeah, that makes sense.
I'm going to barge in and say I did some things like that for charset pipes, a lot of which was designed with 1.8 in mind already. And actually, do you know the reason why Computronics in 1.6.4 uses a different block ID for every block instead of using metadata to multiplex them? That's actually because a few days before I started work on Computronics, I read Dinnerbone's tweet which said that block states are coming, and I decided to design Computronics for that already in 1.6.4. So, you know, it's not a new phenomenon.
Yeah, but generally, in the sense of preparing the state of the mod for the update, that definitely makes sense, and I actually did stuff like that in OpenComputers too, where I just adjusted things that I knew would behave in a certain way in 1.8, so I adjusted it backwards to make it easier to port over.
Yeah, and also, yeah, so essentially, Mind Creator, your opinion on the few things?
What specifically?
Whether it's worth it to wait.
No, definitely. I think you should. I don't see why anyone is really waiting, which is
Anymore.
Yeah.
Please add any more.
Yes, because it's been over a year. Since
Yeah, but
1.8 came out.
mostly all the fixes that people were waiting for just happened relatively not long ago.
I guess.
Yes, the last one, which is the lightning auto calculation stuff, happened in July, so...
Yeah.
Still.
But they've still had quite a lot of time. That's half a year.
Yeah, people are still waiting, and I really do not understand why.
Many people depend on other mods, like...
Yeah.
The reason Charset was started on 1.7 is because I was waiting until factorization moves to 1.8, as I'm planning to do a lot of integration with it, so... For to think of the mods which depend on thermal expansion or Tinker's Construct or Ender.io or Buildcraft or things like that.
Well,
Buildcraft is on 1.8.
I know Tinker's is actually in the process of updating.
It is.
Yes, but
It's
the
been
rewrite.
rewritten completely.
It's gonna take a while though, but people depend on them, and that's why some might wait for 1.9. I'm going to say Minecraft 1.8 will be a lot like 1.3.2. There's going to be a lot of mods on it, but some of the key ones might be missing. Like in 1.3, we were missing red power, but most of the other ones were there. So I think in 1.8 we might miss, I don't know, Ender IO thing. I think Ender IO is definitely not moving over to 1.8 just because there's no time in between the chisel work and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Turag is not against 1.18. He does work on the Chisel 1.8 update as well.
Okay, so I think we should be finalizing slowly because we need to give Servator some time to prepare. He has a talk in 5 minutes. Any last questions?
Okay.
What are your favorite changes in 1.8 from a player perspective? I'm not sure if it's Diorite or Andesite. I'm sorry.
Threading.
1.8 player changes.
As a player, because I play as well, would be my favorite changes would be the execute command probably. That allows you to do a lot more stuff with command block. I do.
My favorite change, because I don't use command blocks, my favorite change is definitely the banners. We have them in Ed Futurum, but they're technically a 1.8 player change.
Yeah, I also really like banners.
Will we see a new Power API system for 1.8, 1.9? That's a giant
most
meme.
likely.
That's a giant meme. Power APIs don't change things, mods do. Our ref is already the lowest common denominator. It just tells you, give me energy. I want to take your energy. I want to give you energy. You cannot get simpler than that.
But still, like the official RF API is still 1.7.
Yeah, but Van Hals port is the commonly accepted
Yeah,
one.
there's an unofficial one that most of us have agreed on for the 1.8
All of
That's
us.
the
version.
one the one he's the one who did that one
Yeah,
for mod
I'm
jam, right?
personally moving over to Neptune Pink's so-called Universal Energy API because, as I said, I'm a factory boo.
I've heard that before.
Yeah, apparently.
Oh no,
Neptune
it was
Pink is working
electricity.
on-
Sorry.
Yeah, no, he's working on a new one. It's just a single class. It just has the difference is that it works on constantly defined work units and that it has a lot of power types for various things. It's supposed to integrate it all. Also, Char said okay, so other questions? Cut off because we need to let Servitor prepare. So cut off now. 1.8 player changes are limited to Alex. No. Well, there's the Alex type model and the Steve type model. That's the thing. Bunnies have ugly model in 1.8. There will be a Charset Tweaks add-on function to disable rabbits and squids, the two worst mods in Minecraft. The two worst mobs. Universal Energy suffers from a certain XKCD. Yes. I'm just calling it because he calls it the Universal Energy API. The only mod I care about is factorization at this point, and Railcraft maybe, and Open Computers and TIS3D. Though I think I like TIS3D that bit more.
And frames.
And frames. And frames. And just enough items. We clearly have just enough items here.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yes.
You know, in 1.8 we have just enough items. It's a shame we can't tell them apart because they're all black and magenta.
Oh god.
Oh wait, no,
Also-
they're null.
Also, one last thing before we finish. I think this is the end. I'm running educamps and the kids I work with are not keen on 1.9. Well, I know that the PvP changes are annoying a lot of young people because they prefer the button mashing style of PvP because, well, it's that mindless kind of fun. The PvP changes, I think are alright. They might make PvP a bit more interesting. I'm not okay with the dual wielding though, and I will definitely be working on a mod to do something to dual wielding if it turns out to be terrible. However, it could be useful for things like wrenching blocks, because I know that's very annoying, having to switch between a wrench and a screwdriver, especially if you're doing gate stuff.
Yeah.
So, also,
Can confirm.
So as a final word, I'd like to have the final word. How many 1.8 modders, how many 1.8 mods do you need to screw in a light bulb? Just one, I think, but all your light in your room is going to be black and magenta. Okay, thank you for the talk. Can we
Pedantisch, genau.
Can we get on the tool in 1.8? It's called the Scrunch. Is that what it's called?
Yes, the scrunch.
Okay, yeah, we already have the Omni tool. Thank you for the talk. If you have any questions about 1.8 beyond that, you can ask us on Twitter and IRC and Reddit.
Yeah.
And me, you can probably even catch on 4chan. Just make sure you know it's me.
Anyway,
Yeah, so-
thank you
so
for
if you
coming.
Yeah, so if you have any
Indeed.
questions and you want people to shout at you to stay on if you want to feel like you have to stay on 1.7, just go to 4chan. Anyway, bye. Okay, now
Bye-bye.
now could you help me remove this decoration quickly, because I think terrassology is not full of missing textures.